Hello and welcome to Sellers of Smashville's maiden episode.
In this series, this YouTube channel, we'll be covering the awesomeness of board games. Now, you're probably saying, what's so awesome about board games and who are we?
Well, okay, first of all, this episode is mostly just a test run, so it's just going to be the two of us today, but hopefully in the future we will be joined by some other gamers. Right, so what is so great about board games?
Everything.
They're fascinating,
They're fun.
they're challenging,
They're mentally stimulating.
and most of all, they're just a great way to get your friends together and have a fun time. But however, by this time, most of my friends do understand what my idea of fun consists of. Oh yeah, George, do you want to come over and watch a movie?
Hey, I got my snack. I'm like, no, let's go.
No, wait, come back. It'll be fun this time. I swear, I won't role play the Germans again. So as you can see, board games can be pretty fantastic.
Now, today we'll be talking about Axis and Allies 1942 edition. Now, this game can be pretty intense at times, a problem which is not solved by goose stepping around the house shouting in German.
Yes it is. But anyways, one of the biggest problems that people have with this game is the time span that it takes to play it. The setup alone can seemingly last forever.
So, besides the setup, the game usually takes a few hours. So, you better set aside a whole day for this game.
I once played 2 consecutive games of A&A, the first taking 9 hours and the second taking 6 hours. I also maybe have a problem.
I don't think you understand what the word means. But let's get to it.
Me. A&A 42 is a team war game for 2 to 5 players, with 1 to 3 players playing the Allied powers and 1 to 2 players playing the Axis powers.
The Allied powers and Axis powers are the same as it was in real life. Allies are USSR, Soviet Russia, then we have Britain, and then we have US here and here. And then the Axis are Germany and Japan.
And also not Italy for some reason.
Yeah,
The turn order is always the same. It goes USSR, Germany, Britain, Japan, and the USA.
And what you do in your turn is the 5 steps. You build your troops. You have your combat. You fight the combat. You have your non-combat, and you place the troops.
And then you collect income. That's the 5th one.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I'm good counting.
Each country has a different starting income, with the Soviets being very, very poor with 24, and the USA was being very, very rich with 42. This results in widely varying gameplay styles.
Now, for example, the Soviet Union must strike hard and fast in the east to make Germany commit. But they have a very weak defense, so Germany can swoop in and have a counterattack that may decimate them. The Soviet Union is usually one of the first capitals to be taken. Now, America has a ton of money, but they're far away from all the action, so they have to wait until they can get in. And meanwhile, the UK must find inner peace with.
So let's just take a moment and talk about buying new units. Even though this phase only lasts a couple seconds, it's what I think is one of the defining moments of the very game, and it's what separates it from other war games like Risk and no. I mean, okay. So look at this. Look at all the different. Look at the huge variety of all the troops you can buy. Look at that. In Risk, you got armies and that's it. You got infantry, artilleries, tanks, anti-aircraft artilleries, industrial complexes, which are like bad, no one buys them, fighters, bombers, submarines, transports, destroyers, cruisers, aircraft carriers, and battleships. Look at all that. So you can buy. It just gives you so many things you can do with your war efforts. You can buy, the infantry, which cost a dime a dozen, but are like really weak. But if you need like quick defense, they're good. Or you can buy a bomber or a battleship, which are super overpowered and can wreck everyone and just destroy everything. But that's probably going to be the only thing you're going to be buying this turn. Buying is the real heart of this game. And if you're eliminated early in the game, you really have nowhere else to point but your own bad purchases.
So the way it works is you buy your stuff and you put it here, and then once you've done with that, later you put it there, and then we get on to combat, the fun part.
Aha! Die in the name of Japanese imperialism. Oh, right. Combat.
So you want to attack someone, do you? Well, first off, you decide who you want to attack, with what troops, and from where. Now, some troops have different movement values, like tanks, which can go... Tanks can go a little ways, whereas anti-aircraft guns can't move at all, and fighters have a very high movement. The combat goes like this.
Right, so once you've declared all of your combat moves, all of them, then you can resolve all of them one at a time. So you take all the troops involved in combat and put them down here. In this scenario, Russia is attacking Germany with 5 infantry, because the green chip represents 3, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a tank, and Germany is defending with 3 infantry, and an artillery, and a tank. So you see, we line them up based on their attack and defense values. Infantry have an attack of 1 and a defense of 2, so that's why the attacking ones are at the 1, and then the defending ones are at 2. So you resolve combat using these dice. The red ones are for attacking, and the black ones are for defending, unless you're certain people, in which case you just use whichever ones for whatever you want, I guess. So you roll 1 die for each troop you control. So for 5 infantry, I'd roll these 5 dice, and how the combat works is infantry have an attack value of 1, which means you need to roll 1 in order to get hit. In this case, I did not roll any 1s. The tank, though, has an attack of 3, which means I need a 3, 2, or a 1. It just means 3 or less for a hit, which I did not get. So, yeah. So once I do that, and let's say I got 2 hits, which I didn't, but the defender would then choose 2 of his units to go behind the casualty zone, and they'd be dead. But he gets to retaliate with all of his troops that were alive at the beginning of the turn. He'd roll for all of his, whatever, he gets 2 hits, so these guys are dead. We remove them from the board. At that point, the attacker, Russia, would decide whether he wanted to keep pressing on or if he wants to retreat. So let's say Russia wins the combat. Russia is now going to take over his new territory, which in this case is West Russia. It's over here. This is Russia to West Russia. So what would happen is Russia would place one of his sickle and hammer troops, let me just grab one, onto the territory, marking that is now his, and he'd move up this many points on the income track up here. So he'd go up 2, and Germany would go down 2.
So, once you're through with the killing and the slicing and the dicing and so once you're through with combat, you get to move some of your troops around to get them in a better position. They don't attack, they don't really move much, doesn't have an effect. It's just preparing for your next turn or for defending when the next person is on with the slicing and the dicing.
After that, you take the troops that you bought at the beginning of the turn, you now get to place them onto territories that have a factory on them. Here. Like Russia, for example. So if you bought any troops, you put them on you could put them on Russia, or you put them on Caucasus, which also has a factory over here, with a limit of the number in the territory. That's how many troops you can put in each territory. Finally, you collect your income that's up here and pass your turn.
So the game ends when one person gets 9 out of the 12 victory cities. Each player starts with 6, so it's the halfway point. Or you can also play the extended version, where you go for all 12. That would be super difficult and take forever, though. So your call.
Also, I'm not sure if it's a typo just on my board or if it's on all boards, but Honolulu is marked as a victory city on the board, but it's not according to the rulebook.
So if you take over a country's capital, you get all of their IPCs, and they can't build anything. So they have to take it back with the units they currently have, or get someone else to help them. So they're screwed for a while.
There's a few other things we haven't mentioned, mostly about naval and sky warfare, but that's the general gist of the game. It's a big old war game that takes a while to play and is pretty intense. And you know what? It's pretty great. If you're looking for a kill your friends and brutal straight-up combat game, this is what you're looking for. There's also a few other versions like 1941,
The kiddie version.
Pacific 1940 and Europe 1940.
Two long versions.
Or you can combine Pacific and Europe 1940 to make a gigantic World 1940 version.
The Takes 5 edition.
Why is it called the Take 5 edition?
Because it takes 5 tables and 5 days.
Fair enough.
Insane.
Anyways, there's a lot of things that we love about this game.
Yeah, there are so many. It's a straight up war experience. There's no game that'll make you feel quite like a general than this, commanding legions of troops all over the board, having to consider the global consequences of your move you make, or willing to sacrifice battles to win the war. It's also one of the most mentally engaging games of anything, or anything really, that you'll ever do in your entire life. Does that sound daunting? It should, but the victory is easily worth it.
And as a history fan, it's very thematically interesting. All these units are modeled after real World War II units, and you can look them up in the rulebook. If you've seen the 2013 Miyazaki film The Wind Rises, you should recognize the Japanese fighters because they are the very same ones designed by Jiro, the protagonist of the movie. When you're playing the game, it's also interesting to note if your game is closely mirroring the events of history, which maybe is a sign that you're playing the game very logically, just as the commanders of World War II, or maybe your game will deviate wildly. Maybe the turning point of the war will happen in Africa, or maybe Japanese troops will successfully take control of San Francisco. Anything can happen.
Now, while there's so many things we love about this game, there are a few things we less than love about it. The one thing being that if you're losing the game, it's really, really hard to make a comeback, just like in a real war. So, again, thematically correct, but I don't know.
Not so great for the game.
Exactly. Also, as we mentioned earlier, it takes a day, which is, I mean, just don't plan anything else and you'll be fine. So, yeah, it's just hard to make a comeback. They take your capital, you can't build stuff, and you're just generally screwed.
And that's just terrible for everybody involved. It's not going to be fun to just be hunkering down in Japan with 100 infantry just waiting to die, and it's not fun to build 200 infantry so you can finally take Japan, which will happen eventually. I wish there was a game mechanic that slowed down the winning side, but in reality they just get even more powerful and win more easily. I have friends who, after playing for 9 hours, got mashed into a bloody pulp, and they did not want to ever play again, which is, it's perfectly understandable. I know how crappy that feels.
Now, this isn't meant to discourage people from playing. We love this game, and many others do as well. You know a guy who likes to dress up as a USSR uniform when playing the game and goes by Captain Kami in our gaming community. The games bring people together and tears them apart. All in all, we recommend the game. Long live the US
Japanese imperialists!